As an Argentinian who has lived in London for 8 years, I have definitely experienced the best and worst of each city. But what does each city really do best, and what is it really like arriving from a laid-back Latin city to a super fast-paced international city? Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Alejandro. I'm an engineer based in the UK, and on this channel we explore the engines that help us live a more purposeful life. First things first. Before moving to London, I lived in many places in France for 3 years, so I had some sort of transition period. So let's talk about 8 differences between life in London and in Buenos Aires. I want to save you time, so I'm leaving timestamps below. Feel free to skip and watch the one you actually care. But before starting, I need to say that everything that I'll mention in this video is before the pandemic and purely based on my personal experience. Things might be slightly different for different people. Brilliant! Let's get started. Number 5. Nightlife. As we said before, everything in London is about optimizing time. So restaurants, pubs, clubs, and pretty much everything starts and finishes relatively early. If we talk about restaurants in London, it's not strange to see some places doing breakfast, lunch and dinner and working many hours. And they close latest at 11 PM. Yes, of course, there might be, some exceptions going till midnight, but that's how it is. In Buenos Aires, restaurants don't open before 8 PM. Even at 8 PM, you might find the restaurant really empty. Only from 9 PM, you start seeing people. I remember in London booking restaurants for 7 PM and packed already. Whereas in Buenos Aires, this is merienda time. It's like a tea time. Again, there might be some exceptions and you'll find people eating earlier at home, but that's typically how it works when going out. If we talk about nightclubs, typically in London they close at 3 AM, whereas in Buenos Aires not before 6 AM. So friends, they tend to meet much later when going to a club. Also in London there are pubs that can open till midnight or perhaps till 1 AM on weekends, whereas in Buenos Aires there are bars that again run till late, 2 or 3 AM easily, just before the club opens. So it's what we call previa, warm-up drinks with our friends before the club. But let me explain the difference between pubs and bars in both cities. British pubs are quite relaxing environments, and although there are pubs in Argentina, they don't serve the same function as they do in the UK. This is because Brits occupy pubs in the same way Argentinians occupy coffee shops. Brits will happily go to a pub during the day without fear of judgment, to work, read, take meetings or simply enjoy a drink. The pub is so deeply ingrained in Britain's sense of community and such an important part of the culture. Sure, Argentina has its fair share of quality bars, but there's nothing like sitting by the blazing fire of a cozy British pub while sipping on a pint of real ale. And by the way, I definitely prefer a glass of Argentinian Malbec wine from Mendoza to a British ale. But that pub feeling, man, I just didn't experience it anywhere else. And also it's worth saying that you can get a decent bottle of wine in Buenos Aires for the price of a pint in London. In London, people drink much more beer than anything else. In Buenos Aires, people drink beer, yes, but a fair amount of wine and a drink called Fernet, which is essentially an Italian type of Amaro, a bitter and aromatic spirit. Fernet is mixed with Coca-Cola as it's too bitter to have it stand alone. You cannot have a shot of that. Shh, don't ever say in Buenos Aires that Fernet is Italian. We think it's ours. In any case, both cities have fantastic nightlife options, and the biggest difference is that in London everything starts earlier and in Buenos Aires much later. Number 6. Safety. How safe are both London and Buenos Aires? I guess here the answer is it depends. Both have certain neighborhoods that are safe and some that you certainly need to keep an eye on your belongings. In London, of course, if we're in a very crowded area full of tourists, we might want to be mindful, right? Or if we come back home late, probably we also want to pay attention like everywhere else. Generally, I feel safe in London, or at least in terms of the places I go and the things I do. In Buenos Aires, I feel like ever since the financial crisis in 2001, theft and robberies have risen and pickpocketing can be common in certain areas. Locals, we know how to behave, but tourists, I think it's always wise to do some research before. Of course, there's always people saying, I traveled to this place and nothing happened, or this is the safest place in the world. But look, I like to say that it's always a good practice to keep an eye on our stuff anywhere we go. Number 7, relationships. At the beginning in London, it's probably harder to make relationships, as most of the time we're working. Life outside work seems to be very challenging to manage. It's not so common to meet our friends in houses, as we tend to live in small places, at least in the early days when we have limited budget. And also there's so many great places to meet outdoors that it's almost pointless to meet at home. And also don't forget what we said before, the city is about optimizing every minute. We hate wasting time, and sometimes we become cyborgs. In Buenos Aires, relationships mean everything. It's certainly much easier to make new friends, meet outside work, invite friends to our places and be invited to. The people and lifestyle create a warm environment to welcome new visitors. Perhaps it's just enough to meet us only for a few hours, and then we'll invite you to go out and to have a drink, to have a saddle, to introduce you to our favorite drink, mate, it's like a tea, and talk about life for hours. We have no problem whatsoever in expressing ourselves in public. We sing, we shout, we dance, and we argue in front of anyone and everyone. And we don't care too much who is actually watching. We're loud and we might be seen as wild sometimes, but frankly we have a big heart, and I think if we make friends here, there's a big chance we'll be friends for life. And just to clarify, relationships are very important in both cities, but because London is a super fast-paced international city and financial center, literally everything flies. And when I go to Buenos Aires for holiday, I feel like I'm in a slow motion film, in a positive way. It just makes me feel, hey, slow down. Life is not just money and career. And this is a nice transition for my last point. Number 8, money and career. London is an absolutely fantastic place to start our careers. It's one of the largest and most influential cities in the world, playing a central role in finance and technology, fashion, medicine, art, and it's truly a global cultural center. But life can be very expensive. The average wages in London obviously are the highest in the UK and very competitive with any city in Europe. But finding an affordable place to live in London is challenging. Food, clothing and transportation are very, very expensive as well. So at the end of the day here, grow fast, make a decent income, buy our first property and build a strong network and figure out our next step. Long-term life in London is certainly not for all of us, but to start our careers, I really think it's one of the best places in the world. You just keep learning by being in such a multicultural environment. And here the comparison is difficult because Buenos Aires is not the multicultural place that London is. So in terms of career, we can't really compare. But to be fair, I think that Buenos Aires is an interesting place to study. There are free universities, and I do believe that if we know what we actually want in terms of education or more like specific areas, there can be good opportunities for exponential growth. But the challenge here is more at the country level, not at the city level. Argentina has defaulted on its debt 9 times, and inflation has often been in the double digits, resulting in several large currency devaluations. So assuming that context, it's much harder to progress. Not impossible, but certainly much more more challenging. If you like this video, you might also want to check this video over here, which is about my recent trip to the Baltics and where we should stay longer, or this one over here, which is about my insane Scottish Highlands trip. Thanks for watching and see you next time.